major event took place in Israel today with 5 buses simultaneously exploding in a bus car park in central Israel next to Tel Aviv. But there are many questions around this event and the timing of the event and what exactly happened and who's responsible. But what we know so far is that the explosion happened, well, simultaneously with other explosions too, in the same area. The devices were planted in buses. It was the evening time, nighttime almost. No one was in the buses. Explosions, fire breaking out. The man who was the security guard in the car park notified his seniors, called the police. Police came, they're carrying out investigations. This wasn't the only event that happened today. 2 other events happened, but the main one happened before, with the Palestinian resistance releasing 4 bodies of Israeli prisoners of war who Israel killed. And I'm going to get to how that could be linked with the events that took place this evening in Israel. But what we know from the attack or from the event that happened, especially with the bus explosions, is that the reports coming from the Israeli authorities or the Israeli police, they're saying that it's an unusual time for an attack like this to happen. There's a ceasefire with Gaza. Israel has a crackdown in the West Bank. Hardly anyone is moving. They're having a siege in many areas in the West Bank. And it's unlikely to be from any Palestinian side. But then we had another report completely contradicting this one, saying that on one of the devices, it said in Arabic that this is a revenge from Tul Karim, in reference to the area from the West Bank where Israel is carrying out its mass terror action against the civilian population and facing resistance as well. Then there was another report of a man running away from the scene. The Israeli authorities again said that this man is not linked to what happened. We questioned him, he's not related to the issue. So the talks now and the suspicions are directed at the West Bank, that this is an act of a Palestinian side. Someone, Palestinian resistance from the West Bank, they're trying to link it with the West Bank. There is no proof, and there is a big problem. The big problem is that there's a lack of trust. There's lack of trust in the Israeli security establishment. There's a lack of trust in the Israeli political establishment. And the population, they're not really believing everything that they're being told. That's a very big problem. So the Israeli authorities are losing credibility. People are saying, like, hold on 1 second. Why should I believe you now? What happened before? There was another suspicious event taking place with a very large mall, one of the biggest malls in South Israel, in flames. All of a sudden, again, suspicious. These 2 events suspicious. But something happened today. What happened? The Palestinian resistance released the bodies of Lifshitz, who is the husband of Yocheved Lifshitz, who the Palestinian resistance released on a humanitarian basis before. Israel did not want to accept her and another elderly woman, but they were eventually forced to take her when the Palestinian resistance coordinated with Egypt. So then they had her, and then she started landing the bombshells of how well she was treated by the resistance, and then she started to criticize Netanyahu, confirming how she was attacked and bombed several times alongside other Israelis who were kidnapped to Gaza. This man was killed by Israel, and the Bibas family, they were killed by Israel. This family and Lifshitz, they were in apartments in Gaza. These people were not in tunnels or anything. The Bibas family, they were in an apartment in Gaza. The Palestinian resistance were trying to protect them as much as possible. The mother was operating in Unit 8200, the southern division part that is primarily focused on the Gaza Strip. Israel, of course, through its barbaric crimes on the 7th of October, did not only kill Palestinians. On the 7th of October, the big massacre was against the Israelis. It was against the Israeli civilian population in all of the kibbutzes and in the areas where they were kidnapped to and taken as prisoners of war in Gaza. Okay. Yesterday, there were multiple orders coming from the Israeli authorities that were very unusual. They said no one should allow, family members to watch television tomorrow. The schools, don't watch television tomorrow. The media, don't report any images from Gaza. Don't show any images from Gaza. Why is it so? People are dead. They're going to release them in coffins. It's not like they're going to have these graphic images or whatever. Why? It's because they were killed by Benjamin Netanyahu and his army. And it's because the man who's the husband of the Bibas family, he confirmed that Israel killed them. It's because Benjamin Netanyahu and his state massacred over a third of the Israeli prisoners of war inside of Gaza. And it's not going to look good on him. The Palestinian resistance offered to release these people before, the bodies, but the Israelis rejected. The Israeli side rejected, at least, of course, the official side, Benjamin Netanyahu. Why? Because Netanyahu didn't want to affect his image. Netanyahu wanted an image of victory once he has the ceasefire. He didn't want bodies in coffins all of a sudden to be released. He wanted people who are alive. Therefore, leaving the bodies up until a later stage. There's another problem. And that problem is that the Palestinian resistance wanted to release some of these people on a humanitarian basis. As a matter of fact, during the beginning period, after the Al-Aqsa flood, the Palestinian resistance, with evidence, was releasing certain people who were taken to Gaza for no reason, as in without asking for anything. And they offered Israel a deal in the beginning, not only for those who they wanted to release with no exchange whatsoever, because on the 7th of October it wasn't only the Hamas leading the event, other groups too, and some of them don't necessarily follow the same standards as the main Palestinian resistance movements. Therefore, they tried to have this humanitarian swap and hand Israel some people without any return, and Israel refused. The only people who Israel accepted, was forced to accept, to be more accurate, it was Yocheved Lifshitz and one other woman in the early days. And after her statement, they said, you know what, we don't want to hear anything from our prisoners of war. We want to keep them in Gaza. Let them die in Gaza, or let something else happen to them. Because when they get out, they start talking and revealing the truth about what's happening. Then, of course, the brainwashing and psychological warfare started with Israel, the manipulation, and of course the waivers to let the prisoners of war sign so that they do not reveal the whole picture. Okay. Reaching today, Netanyahu, Israel altogether, they weren't releasing any of the images in Gaza. What were the images? They were images of Benjamin Netanyahu with blood in his mouth, like a vampire. I was just comparing the guy to a vampire yesterday, and today the Palestinian resistance released an image of him as a vampire. What a coincidence. With the Bibas family, with blood from his teeth, saying that we wanted to return your people alive. Netanyahu decided to kill them. Hamas also released a statement, said that we, to the Bibas and Lifshitz families, we wanted to bring back your loved ones alive. Your government decided to kill them, alongside over 17,881 Palestinian children inside of Gaza. So clarification, but of course, the Israeli media, and of course the mainstream media globally, many of them recruited and paid for, pushed, moved by Zionism, are releasing, of course, the typical propaganda and garbage and denying everything that happened to the thousands, the over 17,000 Palestinian children, the real children who were beheaded with body parts all across and burnt alive for the past 16 months just before the ceasefire took place. And they ignore every child being killed in the West Bank on a daily basis. The level of hypocrisy and double standards is beyond any comprehension. However, on the ground, many in Israel realize the truth. As a matter of fact, there was a headline, a report in the Haaretz newspaper, saying that the coffins arriving in Israel today carry the corpses of neglect. The coffins arriving in Israel carry the corpses of neglect. The neglect did not only happen on the 7th of October, it continued in the following months, when Netanyahu declared to survive instead of save, to fight instead of showing mercy. And they're primarily talking about the Israeli population. Benjamin Netanyahu and his state, they massacred hundreds of Israelis on the 7th of October with carelessness, absolute carelessness. They were ordered to shoot at everything going to Gaza. In the Israeli kibbutzes of Be'eri and Nir Oz, the Israeli army was destroying everything that they suspected any Palestinian was in, but it included many Israelis too. And they tried to flip the coin and switch the whole thing and say, oh no, the Palestinian resistance did everything. Although, of course, the proof came out soon after, when the statement started to come from the Israelis and from those who were present on the 7th of October and following the 7th of October. So the event was an earthquake. The event was something very, very severe. These were scenes that Benjamin Netanyahu did not want the public to see. This is a direct attack on Benjamin Netanyahu and his government. That's why the Israeli authorities yesterday were saying, don't watch TV, don't let your children watch anything. They ordered every Israeli media outlet not to show the videos and images coming from Gaza today, all because it shows the true reality of what happened on the 7th of October. It represents the absolute truth behind Israel's massacres of their own civilians. It proves that Israel implemented the Hannibal Directive not only against the Israeli soldiers, but against the Israeli civilian population as well. As a matter of fact, the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant himself confirmed that, alongside many others in Israel. Now, after the release, all of a sudden, denying, of course, switching, propaganda, PR, but we've had these attacks. All of a sudden, there's an attack in Tel Aviv in the evening, and there was the previous fire taking place earlier during the day. How comes we have an attack, 5 attacks all of a sudden, 5 explosive devices detonated all at once in a parking lot, in several buses, when they're completely empty? What is the exact purpose behind that? There is no purpose. The whole purpose is to divert the attention. Diverting the attention from the main event, shifting the focus, deflecting. From who? From the main criminal and his main criminal entity. This criminal enterprise of genocide. Israel as a state. Deflect, create new, and blame it on the Palestinians, automatically blaming everything on the Palestinians, by the way. And so it's not like, oh no, they don't have actions. Yeah, they do have actions from the Palestinian resistance and Palestinian armed groups. But how quickly they did that, especially with the contradictions too. Previously they said, it's unusual, it's, we're not usually having these attacks, to all of a sudden saying that, oh no, yes, it's Palestinians and they're from the West Bank too. Okay, Benjamin Netanyahu having important meetings and what have you. Deflecting, taking away the attention. It of course worked to an extent. I mean, people seeing fire and explosions, it usually works in diverting attention from the main event, which is the Israeli complicity and Israeli crimes against the Israeli population. Forget about the Palestinians, forget about Gaza. The Israeli crimes, the Israeli massacres against the Israeli population. That's what it was about today, and that's why they wanted to deflect and divert the attention to another event. Therefore, we had this attack in central Israel. Moving on to the next subject. There is a lot of talk, and yesterday I spoke again about the statements about a war against Egypt. This is something that, some people don't really take it seriously, but what people need to understand is that on the ground, every single day we have a new development. One of the latest developments is that the Egyptian Third Field Army today, they declared a high state of alertness or emergency in the North Sinai Peninsula, with deployment on the Israeli borders. There was a report coming in the Middle East Monitor describing this presence and the actions coming from the Egyptian army, and they're linking it directly as a counter move to Donald Trump's plan to expel the Palestinian population from Gaza. Donald Trump wants to expel the Palestinian population. The Egyptians are saying no. They have been saying no before Trump. They've been saying no after Trump as well. They've had military drills. They've had some of the largest military deployment, over 100,000 soldiers. Every time we have a new update, senior figures next to the Gaza borders, more deployment, tanks, everything. And now there is a high state of alertness and readiness next to the Israeli borders with more deployment. Why is Egypt doing this? This is a preparation for a war. Highest state of alertness, highest state of readiness, or state of emergency. You're talking about full preparation for an all-out war. With who? Who is on that side? Israel is on that side. And they know very well who Israel is and how much they will be supported by the United States in case they go to a war with Egypt. Egypt knows that in case a war breaks out between them and Israel, that the United States will take the side of Israel. Hell, some Western countries will take the sides of Israel as well. Don't forget that Egypt's control over Sinai, its land, Egyptian Sinai, this is something that's disputed by some people, saying that, hold on a second, with the Ottoman Empire, the Egyptian province, these areas, they were not under Egyptian control. So even after Egypt liberated them from the Israeli occupation, some were still doubting it. In Britain, in the United States, in other parts as well, they were disputing the Egyptian control over the Sinai Peninsula, but not disputing a Zionist gang of terrorists occupying Palestine and expanding to Sinai. So Egypt knows that in case a war breaks out between them and Israel, the United States and many other Western countries will take the side of Israel, and they will support them, even if they act differently. And that's why Egypt has no faith in the United States and definitely has no faith in Israel. That's why they prevented the B-52 bombers from entering Egyptian airspace. And that's why it led to tensions, and that's why it went back to the United States, and they had to find alternative routes. There are real tensions between Egypt and Israel and the United States, but the main thing now is the reason that Egypt wants to completely get rid of that Donald Trump plan. So the main tensions happening recently are the opposition to the ethnic cleansing campaign. There's a ceasefire, things are progressing, there are breaches, there are problems, but things are progressing. But the main problem is this plan. And they're not really thinking too much if Trump is serious or if he's not serious. What they're thinking of is what actions they need to take to make sure that they're not vulnerable, that they protect their sovereignty and they protect their security and they protect their land. Because Israel will use any pretext under the sun to go and attack Sinai and attack Egypt as a whole and use non-conventional weapons against Egypt. And then tell Trump, oh, look, we will take the Suez. Canal as well, no problem. All of these options are on the table. But now Egypt is trying to push for a solution for Gaza that will include very quick rebuilding, and that will include a very quick plan to get the rebuilding process. And that's why today more heavy equipment was entering Gaza and temporary housing was entering Gaza. Diggers, excavators, tractors, everything is going into Gaza. Okay, moving on. The plan is ready. Egypt has two plans. They will be funded by many countries. Money will not be a problem. Expertise will not be a problem. As a matter of fact, Egypt said we're willing to take the initiative with everything. Our engineers, equipment, everything is ready. Everything is fine. Now, there's even more clarification. And this clarification came in the form of a statement coming from the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. What did he say? He said that all of this talk about the rebuilding of Gaza having to take 20 years is nothing but psychological warfare. We had an earthquake in an area that was 300 times the size of Gaza. We removed the rubble and rebuilt tens of thousands of housing units in under 12 months. So the man is saying all of this talk about Gaza not being inhabitable, the people must leave, it will take so many years. All of that is a form of psychological warfare against the population. Following, of course, the mass-scale barbaric terror of the Zionists and their supporters in Western countries, in the United States administration, in many Western governments, and the full support when it comes to arms. So Erdogan is saying, no, hold on a second. It's not going to take that long. These people are using psychological warfare. So Israel was given the okay to completely carpet bomb Gaza, commit an infanticide and a genocide against the population, every abhorrent barbaric crime under the sun, with the okay from the Western governments, with the push and support from the United States. And now they're trying to justify the Trump plan to ethnically cleanse Gaza, or what they're calling now the willful migration, this new term, the willful migration. Oh, hello, I'll kill everything and destroy everything and you can willfully migrate. As if I all of a sudden care about you. So Egypt is countering that. And that's the main reason for the Egyptian presence in Sinai and the increased tensions. Because in Israel, they're already having these new offices and new plans to start speaking with the population in Gaza. They're actually using psychological warfare against the population, sending out leaflets, as if you're living in an Orwellian world, even worse than that. That, oh, you have no future here, this is your last chance. And the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, he set up a new office to focus solely on taking the Palestinians out, potentially through the Sdoud port or the Ramon airport. Where to, we don't know. But we can take you out. How, what? But they're getting the answer from the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are telling them, we're going nowhere. If we're going to go anywhere, it would be to the homes that you terrorists expelled us from in 1948 and in 1967. To Palestine, to occupied Palestine, that you now occupy. Or to Jerusalem, these areas basically. So now the main problem is happening in Sinai. In Sinai, the readiness is at peak levels. It's very high. The United States and Donald Trump, they're still playing ball with this plan of ethnic cleansing, despite the fact that it's very unrealistic and it's receiving not only popular resistance from the population in Gaza, but also resistance from so many countries. Internally, Donald Trump is facing problems from his European counterparts. He's facing problems with traditional allies in the Arab world, and he's bringing the Arab states together against him.